It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Be sure to follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. If you're not watching the show already, go subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit the notification bell. Leave a like on the video so you never miss a video. Also, follow us on all of our listening platforms as well. I forget to mention that we are a listening podcast as well. I feel like we just focus on YouTube more so, but follow us everywhere that you listen to the podcast as well, and leave a review if you can, depending on the platform. I know we've got a few reviews on Spotify, but maybe you don't listen on Spotify or Apple and you listen to one of the various ones that are out there. I know Pocket Cast, Overcast, there's so many of them, but follow us there. Go check out the description, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on any of those listening platforms. You will find all of our great sponsors, whether that is Game Changers, Everything Custom Designs, Marcello Electric. We've got shorts from DC4L Custom down there. The one thing that you're not going to see from now until July is going to be a GoFundMe for Rock Around the 412. It's wrapped up, everybody, and we want to give a big thank you. We mentioned it on the Steelers show, but we want to be able to say it again. Maybe you just follow us for Penguins content. So just want to be able to say it again. Thank you to everybody that got involved this year, whether that was sharing the GoFundMe, donating to it, getting involved with the East Rochester Salvation Army Angel Tree. This is our biggest impact year in terms of the total amount of kids we were able to do. We can't thank you enough for that. 177 kids since we started this mission, or I guess I should say since we started it, and we're able to track how many kids we've been able to donate, because the first year we just donated the money to a facility. Don't necessarily know how many kids were there that got impacted, but since we're able to track this, 177 kids Christmas provided for. Was it 66 in total this year? It was our Lemieux year. And Smitty, I got to say, since this is on the Penguin show, Smitty had a funny joke on Facebook that hopefully nobody took seriously, but he said, since this was our Lemieux year, 66, he had to tell 33 kids that we couldn't get them Christmas this year. If you get that joke, you should, if you're listening to the Penguin show. But yeah, again, thank you again to everybody that got involved. It's awesome. Be on the lookout for probably a live show. We think tentatively as of right now, probably sometime after Christmas, we'll be doing a live show giving away the prizes for everybody that donated at least $10 to this mission. Some of those prizes include Penguins tickets, along with various other things like a couple signed jerseys from Pat Fryermuth and Jared Jones, a James Daniels game-used visor, a Steelers training camp poster that's signed by 21 people within the Steelers organization, some Around the 412 merch, some Game Changers t-shirts, all sorts of goodies out there. Maybe you're only focused on the Penguins tickets, or maybe that's because the Penguins have been playing better. But again, thank you to everybody that got involved in Rocking Around the 412. We'll be back with it in July 1st of 2025, which seems like so long away right now as we sit here. Not even Christmas of 2024 is over, but it's going to be here before we know it.
Well, listen, as much as I love doing this, like, I feel like I need a little bit of a breather here, so I'm glad that it's that we're behind this. By the time you guys are watching or listening to this, this will have already happened. But the day that we are recording this, tomorrow, so Thursday, is the day that two families I'm dropping stuff off for, and then that's it. We're done until July. So very excited for those people to be able to enjoy that. Actually, if you guys follow one family, I took the gifts to them, and they decided to let the kids have an early Christmas. So we had a family already that opened their gifts and stuff that day. So shout out to them. It's actually somebody from the Central Valley School District that works with my mom. 2 kids, their third is on the way. They already know that the baby has a heart defect, and he's going to need multiple surgeries within his first few years of life. So that's why we wanted to do something special for them this Christmas. But, those are kind of the stories that are kind of throughout this mission. It's always, people that we're reaching out to where there's something going on with a family in any way that we can help out and you guys can help out. We like to get involved. So again, one last big thank you from myself. I know Tyler already spoken, but give you guys a little bit of a breakdown of those 66 kids. 54 of those were tags from the Salvation Army, 8 kids across 3 different local families, and then 2 separate GoFundMe campaigns. One close friends with our friend Morgan, who you guys might be familiar with, used to co-host the podcast Yinzers, Tokyo Mo. Still, I'm sure, follow her on Twitter and stuff. Her hairstylist son was going through something, and we wanted to do something special for them with their GoFundMe that they have going on. And then a family friend of Tyler's as well, Owen, with his GoFundMe and everything that's been going on there as well with him. So we donated to those 2 GoFundMes as well. So we got involved in a lot of different things this year. We're able to really spread the money out across a lot of different platforms and impact a lot of kids, 66 to be exact. So thank you for helping us be able to do that. But anyways, 5.5 minutes into this thing, I hope that wasn't too much of a spiel. We can get into some hockey now, because Tyler, going back to last week, your boy, pat on the back. I said they'd have 5 points in the next 3 games before we spoke again. They did 5 points in the last 3 games before we spoke tonight. One of those, a 9-2 blowout of the Montreal Canadiens, where they just absolutely exploded in the third period of this game, which is kind of where I want to start, because I think that you're seeing, we call it secondary scoring. I feel like anytime it's not Sid and Gino, which, by the way, those 2 guys have not been scoring a ton, at least goals. Sid's obviously impacted the stat sheet as well. But it's the Rakells, it's the Bryan Russ of the world that are scoring at the 30+ goal clips. If you look at what they're expected to over the course of a season now, with Rakell leading the team with 14, Bryan Russ with 12. Those 2 guys really carrying the load offensively, and that line's been so good, those 2 being centered by Sidney Crosby. Again, I think that it's weird, because now the question is, it's flipped from, are they going to have enough scoring up and down the lineup to, are they going to have the scoring from their stars? I know Gino got one the other night. Again, like Sid is still getting assists. His last goal, though, November 23rd against Utah, the last time that Sidney Crosby scored a goal, which is crazy to think about.
600th.
Yeah, exactly. It was his 600th. So, maybe is he a milestone chaser? Is he
At this point, he could be.
No, but seriously, so it's nice to see the scoring coming from other places. Obviously, I'm not necessarily concerned about it. I think that those are going to come, especially with how well, like I mentioned, those 2 guys are playing with him. Was very close to scoring one just the other night as well, which, like, who's the goalie for the Kings now? Kemper barely got a piece, and then it slides right across the line, but goes through the crease. So I think the goals are coming for Sidney Crosby. I'm not necessarily worried about it, but it is nice to see that they're getting contributions from other guys as well.
Yeah, I think it's great. Being able to see some of that depth scoring, if you will. And I kind of mention it every single time I mention depth scoring, secondary scoring, that maybe Rakell shouldn't count in that, but I feel like he needs to, because of the year he had last year. Just looking at how poorly he played, it's like a bounce back year. I feel like for the Penguins specifically, if they had a comeback player of the year just for the team right now, I think that he would be leading that conversation with the year that he's been having, leading the team in goals with 14. And ever since he found out that he was left off of the national team for the 4 Nations thing that they're doing in February, he's been on a tear. He's gotten 4 goals and 8 points in 5 games. I think that it's been huge for Rickard Rakell this year to have this type of impact. It's kind of like what we were hoping we would get whenever you did give him that contract extension, albeit an iffy contract extension in terms of the actual term of the contract for how long it was, not necessarily the money, but this is something that I think that the Penguins could live with as far as the actual contract that you are paying him and the output that you're getting from Rickard Rakell. I think that he's been fantastic. He's been driving that line offensively. Bryan Russ has been super good as well. He continues to be one of the better offensive players on this team and is consistently finding the net, especially as of late. He had the hat trick the other night in that Habs game, and I mentioned what a wild Habs game that was. What a wild third period that the Penguins had, scoring 6 goals in the third period. How often do you see that, especially in a year where it feels like, how often do we see this Penguins score 6 goals in a game, let alone 6 goals in a period?
I mean, any team, though, to score 6 in a period. Remember that game where we had against the Stars where it seemed like the Stars, every shot they were going to put on net, they would score a goal. They didn't even do that. So it's, it's rare.
Yeah, it is very rare. But I feel like the lines are meshing right now for the most part. As you mentioned, you'd like to see some more scoring from your stars. I know Malkin got credit for the goal the other night. I would argue Bunting did all the work and Malkin's stick would just happen to be in the right place. But I feel like something's got to give at some point with your superstars. I know we talk about how age catches up to everybody, but I feel like there's no way that they hit these milestones and then all of a sudden their bodies realize they're 37 and 38 years old and they're just going to stop producing. I don't think that's the case. I do think that there is better hockey from both of them, and I feel like they are going to find the net more as time goes on, and maybe it is just still finding some of these right combinations for these players. And who knows? I mean, maybe it does take eventually putting Malkin back on Sid's wings if that's what they want to do. If it
but the
gets
thing
to,
is, like, that line with Sid, Rakell, and Russ is played like Sid's not scoring the goals, but
no,
like,
he's
does
not
that
scoring
matter?
the goals, but they're playing well. That's the point. It doesn't matter. It's like Sid's not necessarily playing bad as a player, but he's just not finding the net. How important is that? I think that's up for debate. Obviously, you want him to find the net, you want him to score, but if he is still producing a highly offensive line and they're finding the net, his wingers, I don't know that it necessarily matters. But all of that said, I do think that eventually you want your stars to find the net, and I still think that there's another gear for Sidney Crosby to find this season. I don't think that he has played up to the best of his ability. I think that he knows that. I think mentally he knows that. And so I think there's another gear for him to kick into. And I mentioned before that kind of once you get past New Year's, something sometimes kicks Crosby into gear. And maybe is it a sniff of a playoff? I'm sure in years past it was like a points chase as well for other guys around the league that I'm sure motivated him too. But we know as Penguin fans watching him his entire career, Sidney Crosby loves winning more than anything else. And I just can't imagine Sidney Crosby sitting idly by while the rest, not necessarily that the rest of the team is doing work around him, but he's not going to let himself not find the net. He wants to contribute to the best of his ability as well. And I think there's another gear that he's going to find.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I'm not. We talked about this. Are we worried about Sid? But he's actually looked better. Again, it's just he only has 8 goals this year and doesn't have one since scoring his 600th last month. We're coming up on a month actually. Next week would be a month if he doesn't get a goal in the next week. So we'll see how that continues to trend. But certainly, like, the results of the team are ultimately what matters here. And they played good hockey as of late. The game against the Senators is very frustrating just because I thought the Pens played pretty okay in that game. I thought Olmark was the difference for them in net, ended up being the first star of the game for the Senators. I thought he stole a couple early, and that ended up really being the difference as Ottawa ends up winning in overtime. Don't have too much to say on that one other than, like, Blake Lizotte gets a goal in that one. I feel like he's been a really nice addition. Also, Chris Letang kind of on a heater in terms of scoring as well. So, again, that just kind of speaks to the contributions they're getting up and down the lineup. And then they get an overtime win against the Kings. Gino does score in this one. Matt Grzelcyk with a game-tying goal in the third period was his first goal of the season. Before he scored that, he was leading the lead in points for a player that had no goals. He had 15 assists before he had a goal, which is an interesting stat.
Cool.
And then Rickard Rakell with an insane deflection in overtime to win it. So, I mean, yeah, they've been playing pretty solid hockey. How much of that is literally just about basically the same stuff happening, but getting, goaltending that is at least not sinking the ship. I think a large part of that is that, but I also think, again, as I go through these games, you see different names scoring goals each night. I think you have a collective group that might not be getting the top end talent scoring right now, but you have more guys in the lineup each night that are capable of contributing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you look outside of your stars, I think what you are getting from looking at top 6 guys, what you're getting from Rakell, what you're getting from Russ, what you're getting from Bunting now. And I mean, honestly, he didn't have a goal in some of these games that we just had, but the trade for Philip Tomasino has looked promising since that's been the case. I think that he's been a productive player. You look at the top 6 players outside of your two in the middle, I think it's super productive, especially the last couple of weeks. Then you look at the elsewhere, at the rest of your team. I think Cody Glass has been a really good player for this team. I think Blake Lizotte has been a really good player for this team. And when you add some contributions here and there from guys like Beauvillier, guys like Achari, I think that you find a very productive hockey team that can score at depth. They can score more consistently, especially from what we saw in the beginning of the season. They were like one of the bottom teams in shooting percentage over the first month and a half of the season. And whenever you get more consistent goaltending, we mentioned this last week, when the goaltending has not been great for the Penguins, and even in these games that they've been winning, I don't think that it's been great for the Penguins, but it's gotten better. You have gotten, I guess, more consistent goaltending that is serviceable to find yourselves a win. And while there's overall goal save above expected isn't still not great, they're actually the exact same for Nedeljkovic and Jari at -6.
I assume they're both bottom 10.
Let me see. I can sort by all teams and tell you. That's probably not great. Let me sort it by players that have played at least let's go 10 games. Goal save above expected. They are both bottom 10. They are the 8th and 9th worst goalies in goal save above expected in the league that have played a minimum of 10 games.
Dude, how about Jeremy Swayman? I know that we're not a Bruins podcast, but what the hell?
Oh, he's worse. -11.5. And
he's like second worst.
For Connor Ingham is second worst. Jamie Swayman's is worse.
Oh, he's okay. But when I saw it or before, it was
right now he is the worst. So when putting that into perspective, maybe it's not so bad that they're at -6. But that being said, the fact that they are at -6 goal save above expected, that technically, for how bad it looks on paper, is a number that's going up in a positive trajectory. I know that sounds terrible, but the fact that that number is technically going up, that is a good sign for the Penguins. That means that these guys are making saves, that they're making the saves they're supposed to, and especially they are making saves when they're not technically supposed to as well, which is something that they did not get for the entire month of October and November. You've been starting to get it in December, and we mentioned this before, but I'm not saying that they're a good hockey team still, but if you get the more consistent play in net, you get the scoring that you've gotten, and we'll talk about the defense in a second, but if your defense doesn't collapse in their own end, I'm not saying they're good, but this team could somehow sneak their way into the playoff conversation, which they're in right now. They were, as of yesterday, they were in the playoff conversation based off yesterday's results. They're knocked out of a wild card spot. And I know these teams still have games in hand on the Penguins, but they're right there. They have everything in front of them. And I know that there's still like 50 games left, but they've got everything in front of them to make a case for getting into one of those wild card spots. I don't know about finishing in the top 3. I mean, you'd be talking about a absolute surge at this point from the Penguins and a collapse from one or two of the teams in the Metropolitan Division. But as I mentioned, not saying they're good, but they might just like find themselves lucking their way into a playoff spot the way that they've been playing.
And I'll be honest, I think that's more of a product of the other teams as opposed to the Penguins. I just think that like one or two teams that make the playoffs this year aren't going to be very good teams. Like it's going to be like Washington.
Like Washington last year. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that second wild card, potentially even the first wild card, because I don't think Tampa Bay's been that impressive this year. We'll see what they continue to look like as we go forward here. But like Ottawa right now, that second wild card, 34 points in 31 games. I mean, like I think that second wild card for sure is going to be open for a team, whether it is Ottawa, Pittsburgh, Philly, New York. I just kind of keep expecting to turn it on. The Rangers, they made a trade as well. We want to talk about this Penguins trade. That's how we can transition. God, if I could talk here to the defense now, bringing back P.O. Joseph into the fold. Interesting move here, getting him back. We knew Marcus Pettersson going to miss some time. He goes on IR with an injury that he suffered, very nasty looking hit against Ottawa, left the game early. He goes on IR week to week. You know how those things go. But yeah, we'll see what POJ brings into the mix. I mean, he's a depth defenseman. I'm curious to see how they pair this up and everything like that. He's certainly not a game changer, but we'll see how it shakes out. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la, best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. Okay, I just realized as that was playing, I had the Steelers Afternoon Drive banner scrolling at the bottom. So literally just changed that. So if you guys are watching 20 minutes into this thing,
we run a high quality show here, people.
now I'm just wondering, was it like that the entire Steelers one, or did I have the right one playing?
It might have
one?
Been.
Man, I gotta
didn't
pay better
notice.
attention to that. I recorded that obviously earlier in the day and I didn't change it out. So, or I might not have changed it out potentially. So you might see that the entire time on the Steelers episode. But anyways, this is around the 412. That was a ad for Game Changers, which I was very bad at transitioning to, but I looked up and I was like, oh, we're 20 minutes into this thing. I haven't played the ad yet. So let me hurry up and do that. But yes, POJ back into the fold for the Penguins. It's funny because we even mentioned before, like, when we got to the start of the season and Matt Grzelcyk was playing on the top pairing, I was like, man, based off the results at the end of last year where I thought POJ had started to look better, and I really didn't understand why they didn't at least like tender him a contract at the very least. I would have rather just like brought him back and played him with Chris Letang because I thought that they would get better results there. So I'm curious to see, just for future considerations going back to St. Louis, what the plan is here for POJ, because you certainly have like Owen Pickering. I wouldn't want to necessarily move him off of Chris Letang's line there, but do you think POJ is going to work his way into the lineup right away within the sixth, or is this more of like a seventh defenseman or potentially just an AHL guy for them?
I have two different answers. I'll answer the question that you asked first, which is, do I think this is going to be the case? I don't think so. I think that this is a depth move, seventh defenseman as of right now. I don't think that there is anything that should keep either of the other guys on the left side, not named Owen Pickering, in the lineup over a guy like POJ. And if I were taking one out, I know he just scored a goal, but like watching Matt Grzelcyk play hockey sometimes just pisses me off. And
you would take him out before Graves?
Yeah, because I think that if I'm wanting somebody to have a more elevated role, I think that I would rather take Grzelcyk out, play POJ on Carlson's side, and still shelter Graves. Because I think that Graves in his role has been fine with Shea. You shelter the minutes and whatever. I just think Grzelcyk has been really bad. And albeit despite him scoring that goal the other night, I just think defensively he's been bad. And
yeah, I'm not disagreeing. I think it goes back to my opinion of the two at the beginning of the year, where it was like, I felt like Grzelcyk at least had one redeeming quality that you could try to bring out in him, and he can transition the puck. I think that's really what he brings to the team, is he's able to move the puck up the ice. Pretty solid passer out of his own zone to exit his own zone. So that's to me why I would lean towards him staying in the lineup over Ryan Graves. But if what you're saying, if your opinion is also kind of taking into consideration how Mike Sullivan would deploy them and thinking that would mean, would you rather have Grzelcyk second pairing and POJ third pairing, or POJ third pairing, Ryan Graves POJ second pairing, Ryan Graves third pairing, then I understand where you're coming from, because
that's kind of where I was looking at it. I didn't imagine. I would not think that POJ coming in means Ryan Graves moves up. I think that you're kind of picking and choosing which one you want to move, and POJ just slides into that spot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. But like one for one, if I'm just choosing one, I'd rather keep Grzelcyk in the lineup just in a lesser role.
And I think that's fair too. I just think that the way it's currently constructed, I would take Grzelcyk out and put POJ in, and Ryan Graves stay the same. Now, do I think anything like that is going to happen? No, I don't. I think that POJ, at least for now, is going to continue to be the seventh defenseman for this team. I think that they're going to stick with Pickering, Grzelcyk, and Graves, and things could change. Ultimately, you never know what other injuries could happen. You never know what play could diminish from either of these guys, and POJ gets his opportunity. But I don't think that the Penguins are going to make that transition, at least not immediately. But I think it is in the cards still. And I think there's something that's comfortable with familiarity, and the Penguins and Mike Sullivan are familiar with POJ. and he's not a player that is like this wild card of a player. You kind of know what he is at this point in his NHL career, and you take it or you leave it. And I think that that's something that the Penguins could find themselves being more comfortable with later down the road this season. And that could lead to POJ getting more involvement in this defensive unit.
Yeah. The safety with the floor of what he is as a player. I don't think obviously he offers much ceiling beyond what we've seen at this level, but they know what he is. They've known how to deploy him. And again, I thought at the end of last year, the results are pretty good. So I was kind of surprised that he wasn't brought back in any capacity, or at least like tendered and then used as a trade chip or something like that. So, but clearly didn't necessarily have a ton of value around the league. St. Louis got him for nothing and then has flipped him for nothing, just future considerations going back to St. Louis. So, but I don't think it's a bad guy to stash. Obviously, the depth of the position, we've already seen Marcus Pettersson go down. You can never have enough depth. I wanted to give the last thing that I want to talk about is just give a little bit of a cap tip, man, to the start of Owen Pickering's career, like how steady he has been on the back end. I know that people probably wish there was more offensive upside to tap into, but when you look at this defensive group, and you have the two defensemen that we talked about the most, Chris Letang, Erik Karlsson, who are more of the offensive minded players. Obviously, I mean, Chris's game has rounded out more as the years have gone on, certainly. But having a defensive first guy, I think, is very important, especially when we don't know what the future is of Marcus Pettersson, whether that is him playing out the rest of the year, him being traded, whatever that looks like. I think the development of Owen Pickering has made you at least a little bit more comfortable with the idea of knowing that you at least look like you have one guy on the left-hand side at the very least.
I mean, we talked about how Marcus Pettersson might be turning into the latter form of Brian Dumoulin, and Owen Pickering could be taking over as the younger form of Brian Dumoulin right now. He's been super good. I don't know. I know you're logged into my Athletic account. I don't know if you look at some of Yoey's articles, but he mentions how good Owen Pickering has been on pretty much every single article that he's written over the last couple of weeks. And he said that he has to continue to mention it because of how good that he actually has been. No one saw this coming when he made his NHL debut, that he was going to be this efficient this early on. And I feel like this is something that the Penguins needed to hit on. They needed one of their prospects to pan out. And maybe the sample size is too small right now to say that he is a for sure defensive defenseman for the Penguins, part of this team's future, and is a stud in their back end. But the results so far have been super promising. And I feel like this is such a need for the Penguins. It is a welcome sight to actually see a prospect come up and honestly, not even just live up to expectations, exceed expectations. I feel like he's been playing at higher expectations than anyone had whenever he was making his debut just a few weeks ago. And I'm here for it. I'm sure the Penguins are here for it. I just think that it's something that had to happen at some point with one of these prospects that the Penguins have brought up. I mean, we've gotten guys up here, whether it's defensively or offensively. Some of them have played well, but I don't think any of them have played to the level that Owen Pickering has this early on and this consistently game in and game out. It's something that the Penguins had to have happen in what is putting it lightly, lackluster farm system that the Penguins had and that Kyle Dubas took over. Someone had to hit at the NHL level. I know it's a small sample size, but right now that guy that looks like he's hitting is Owen Pickering, and he has been very, very good.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the work has started for Dubas in terms of replenishing this farm, but you're absolutely right. When you look at what it's been over the last few seasons, we've talked about how barren the cupboard has been. So hopefully we're trending in the right direction in terms of replenishing that. And Kyle Dubas continues to get assets to do so, whether they are, younger players or draft picks, which, you look at the amount of picks they have through the 2027 draft. They're going to have a ton of opportunities to stockpile this farm system. So hopefully they take advantage of that. But anything else, Tyler?
Nothing in particular. You just mentioned about their draft picks, though, and I was just very curious. So I'm looking at it really quick. Over the first 3 rounds, over the next 3 years, they have 14 picks in the first 3 rounds over the next 3 years. They've got a first and 3/3 in 2025, a first, 2 seconds, and 2/3 in 2026, and the same thing, a first, a 2 seconds, and 2/3 in 2027. So Dubas has been to work. Dubas has been stockpiling some of those picks. And you know what maybe could have been a draft pick coming this way and could have been a potentially high one, maybe even a first-round pick if Marcus Pettersson doesn't get hurt. Maybe that doesn't happen now.
Oh,
but based off the way the Penguins have been playing, I know we talked about how it felt like Marcus Pettersson is someone that is probably going out the door no matter what and no matter where the Penguins are in the standings. But maybe that conversation changes. And I'm not saying that they extend him, but I think that the injury definitely plays into that. We'll see what the recovery looks like for Marcus Pettersson. But trading an injured player is not always the easiest thing. You're not always going to get the best return.
Jake Gensel last year, if we keep comparing it to that situation, in terms of like just where the team is at, but also obviously a UFA player that is good, but doesn't seem like necessarily priority to extend, and now also being hurt. I guess the parallels just continue with Jake Gensel. The one thing that does maybe if you are somebody that wants to trade Pettersson, and I'm kind of leaning that way despite me being a big fan of his, the Canucks apparently want to get a deal done before the roster freeze before the holiday, which is like, okay, so they got to do something in the next 48 hours. I don't see the Penguins being a part of that. To me, that was the most logical trade partner for Marcus Pettersson. So you just wonder, okay, if these teams are going to get involved early in trade activity, how many, potential partners is that going to even leave for the Penguins when it does come time to trade Marcus Pettersson? So that's the one thing that I think would come to my mind. But I'll be honest, I'll like, unless something drastically changes in the next couple months, even if they're in the exact same spot, just like a point or two out of the playoffs, I still think he's traded. Like I don't think that they'll use him as their own rental. I think Dubas is going to prioritize the future assets over like utilizing him as their own rental.
Yeah, I think he's going to be traded too. I more so mentioned maybe the plans change just because of the injury. Like he's on IR right now. What's his recovery going to look like? If it's a nagging injury that takes a long time to recover, I mean, that could just affect things. So we'll see how that plays out. He was just put on
at the very
IR
least would impact the return. Like even if he is traded, would impact what they get back for sure. So we'll see. But I don't know. You look at most of these guys. I'm curious. Like, you even have guys like Kevin Hayes, who Dubas would acquire just to really get the pick back. Because right now, you look at the lineup on a nightly basis, and Kevin Hayes not even making the cut. Smitty from around the 412 here, and while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keek at Keek's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keek's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app The Cut, book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keek's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. I'm looking at my mouse right now just to make sure that it, I think it still works. These videos are pissing me off lately with like the 1 second delay playing them. But anyways, be sure to check out Keek and Keek's Barbershop. Also Tony, Ashley, they all do great work over there. But download the app The Cut, book an appointment over there. You can do a walk-in with the aforementioned Tony or Ashley. Tony, a big fan, by the way, of the coffee reviews each day. So gotta give him a shout out on the podcast as well, because literally replies to my Instagram story every single day to give his thoughts. But yeah.
Love that.
Shout out to them over there. Shout out to Game Changers, gamechanger.la, pick6.la. Use code AT412, save yourself $10. Sidney Crosby design over there, Yoder design over there, Lemieux design over there, or non-Penguins related stuff too if you're also a Steelers or Pirates fan, or college athletics, other teams. I don't really care as long as you use code AT412.
Maybe soon they'll need an Owen Pickering one.
Soon they might need an Owen Pickering one. Hey, you know what? I shouldn't be laughing. That's absolutely right. They'll need an Owen Pickering one. Definitely. That's the player he'll turn out to be. No question about it. Anyways, Marcello Electric, be sure to check them out as well. Despite what I said last week, they do service Beaver County as well as Butler, Lawrence, and what's the other one now that I'm forgetting?
Allegheny.
Allegheny. I did that on purpose. really. So be sure to check them out. Marcello Electric, link to the Facebook down below. We'll give you the phone number to contact as well. Brandon Marcello, Joe Marcello, brothers in business together. Marcello Electric, servicing the 4 counties that I always definitely remember. Butler, Allegheny.
You realize the situation you've put yourself in now. Last
What's
week,
that?
you forget the county that we grew up in, the county
Beaver.
that you currently live in. And this week, you forget
Allegheny,
the county that's just 412.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just tough scenes over here.
Mm-hmm. It's Lawrence and Butler always in the Rolodex.
And Lawrence and Butler, I mean, I feel like Lawrence is definitely more 4 or 724. Butler might be a mix of 724 and 412 a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Allegheny is for sure 412 territory around the 412.
And honestly, like when I think of Allegheny, I think of like the bolts, like the electric, which he has as his logo. If you're watching there, so like, yeah, I just had to remember it by alphabetical: Allegheny, Beaver, Butler, Lawrence.
There you go.
That's how we'll do it going forward.
Abel.
But anyways, be sure to check that out as well. DC4L Customs, our shorts are there. Haley Wagner, small business, everything custom design. She does our t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeves, or anything else that you want custom. But you can get our logo, you can get something of your own, whatever you want. Be sure to check her out, hit her up, and get something over there. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you were here on, I almost said Facebook right there, YouTube. I don't know what's going on. It's getting late. On YouTube, leave us a comment as well. Hit us with a question, all that good stuff, and leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, which is Apple, Spotify, and a bunch of different platforms that don't include Facebook. And maybe you're in Allegheny County. I don't know. But for Smitty, for Tyler, this has been the Around the 412 Penguin Show. We got to get out of here before I don't misspeak or say something else stupid. So until then, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.